नमस्कार दोस्तों, today we have gathered to discuss one important aspect of corporate insolvency resolution process, that is insolvency resolution process of financial service provider. If you look at the IBC, it's divided into five chapters, or rather five parts. The most important part which we are concerned with right now is part 2, which is insolvency resolution process of corporate person. There are few important definitions with respect to financial service providers. These are the definition of corporate person, corporate debtor, financial services, financial service provider, financial service regulator, and section 227 and 239. These are the enabling provisions available with central government to make law and rules with regard to financial service providers. We will discuss them one by one. Section 3 subsection 7 talks about corporate person. It says corporate person means a company, a limited liability partnership, or any other person incorporated with limited liability under any other law for the time being in force. However, it expressly includes financial service provider out of the preview corporate person's definition. If we move further, it also talks about corporate debtor, section 3 subsection 8. It says corporate debtor means a corporate person who owes debt to any person. Now, then who is the financial service provider? Section 330, section 3 subsection 17 is there, which says the financial service provider means any person who is providing financial service in terms of authorization issued by registration granted by financial service regulator. So now it leads us to another two definition, which is what is financial service and who is a financial service regulator. If you look at section 3 subsection 16, it gives the definition of financial service. It's an inclusive definition. So who all come under the definition of financial services? It's basically banks, NBFCs, person providing depository services, insurance companies, custodian or investment managers, broker, investment advisor, PMS service providers, intermediaries in respect of financial services, collective investment schemes, and then there are RTA agents are there, registrar and transfer agent, underwriters are also covered under this, and prepaid instrument and credit card providers. So after this, who is the financial service regulator? It's basically, as you would understand in common parlance, RBI is there, SEBI is there, Security Exchange Board of India, IRDA with respect to insurance companies, PFRDA is there with respect to, which is regulating pension fund, Reserve Bank of India, you all know. Or there could be some other financial regulator which may be notified by the central government. Now there comes a section 227 which gives the power to central government to notify the financial service providers in consultation with financial service regulators, sector regulators, or they may also notify category of financial service provider for the purpose of CIRP. So for the purpose of their insolvency and liquidation proceeding, which may be conducted under this code, and they may also specify the manner in which this has to be carried forward. The insolvency and liquidation proceeding for financial service provider or their category of financial service provider may be conducted with such modification as may be prescribed by the central government. You all know the IBC came into operation with effect from 28th May 2016. However, the provision of section 227 were notified much later, that is with effect from 1st of May 2018. So then again, along with section 227, there is one section, section 239, which is basically a section giving power to make rules with regard to a particular section or particular aspects of IBC. So in these rules, there is a sub rule of ZK which provides the power to central government to make rules for the manner of conducting insolvency and liquidation proceeding under section 227. So these were the predominantly basic framework or basic section in relation to financial service providers CIRP. Now you may ask, what is the need for separate framework for financial service provider, whereas we already have a separate CIRP proceeding with respect to corporate person. So if you look at the entities providing financial services, if they are taken into insolvency as per the existing insolvency regime, so it could lead to disruption or distress in the market, which may lead to triggering of financial instability in the economy as a whole, because they provide a very critical services to nation. They are the institute of systematic financial importance. So their collapse may trigger the collapse of entire industry. Again, a lot of public money is involved. The public interest will evaporate. As a country, you need to maintain stability and resilience of financial system as well. And due to sheer number of customer base with this financial sector, which are disaggregated across length and breadth of country, they are very diverse, so which makes collective coordinated corrective action very difficult against the financial service providers. So again, due to their sheer size of entity or size of operation, it may lead to domino effect. Because let's say a large bank is to be taken to insolvency, there are a lot of small companies might be depending upon him, who in turn would have borrowed from them or maybe in the process of borrowing. So their business in turn will also get disturbed. So likewise, this will create a domino effect, which will not be a very good example or scenario for any country's economy. So if you look at it, what would be the relevant legislation in India other than IBC for financial sector? So there is a Financial Resolution and Deposit Insurance Bill in 2017 which was tabled. There was a lot of hue and cry because this bill allowed using depositors' money to pay off the bad debts, or use that money against the provision created by ailing banks against their bad debt. So then again, there is one section 45 MBA to RBI Act is also there, which also empowers RBI to amalgamate NBFCs with other NBFC, restructure NBFC. They may also provide for sale of assets of NBFC. They may also establish a temporary bridge institution for the above activities. So these are the powers or enabling provision available with the government or RBI with regard to financial service provider, but they were limited to NBFC. Now moving on further, is NBFC could be categorized as a financial service provider? If you look at the IBC as such, there is no separate definition, or it does not define NBFCs as such, but instead it provides that financial service provider is defined under section 317, which says a person engaged in providing financial services and authorization issued or registration granted by financial service regulator. If you compare this section with section 316, which we just discussed, it can be inferred that NBFC can be considered as financial service provider on case-to-case basis, because the definition of financial services is inclusive definition. It's not a exclusive definition. The intent of legislation from section 317 of the code is to cover the activity which are substantive and crucial to economy. So before we move any further, let's have a very quick look at the international scenario. Financial Stability Board, established under the aegis of G20, which is a group of 20 nations to which India is also a signatory and a member of G20. So they have a FSB key attribute. Financial Stability Board is the full form of FSB. So what are those attributes? Basically, they want the continuity of systematically important financial service and payment, clearing and settlement functions. There has to be protection to depositor, insurance policy holder. There has to be moratorium on payment and legal proceeding. There has to be an avoidance of unnecessary destruction of value, and there should be a speedy and transparent predictability through legal and procedural clarity. Plus, advanced planning for orderly resolution. So all the G20 nations agreed that they will, based on these parameters, they will bring a resolution for financial service providers. So based on this, financial service provider framework has been laid down by the government. So if you look at USA's framework in dealing with the insolvency, they have Frank-Dodd Act 2010 and US Bankruptcy Code. Frank-Dodd Act 2010 is for bank or insurance deposit taking institution, brokers, dealers, investment firms and insurance companies. Basically, it deals with institutions which are systematically important to a nation's economy. Further, this act also provides for OLA, which is Orderly Liquidation Authority, to liquidate the financial institution so that the taxpayers' money is not used in bailing out the financial institutions. For the US Bankruptcy Code, most of you would know that there are Chapter 11 petition is there. Once somebody can declare themselves bankrupt whenever they are not able to pay off their debts. Moving on, if you look at the Japan's infrastructure in dealing with insolvency of financial service provider, they have an agency called Financial Service Agency, which is a financial service regulator. The Deposit Insurance Act provides for mechanism to deal with financial crisis in Japan. So they have predominantly divided their financial institution in three categories: locally systematic institution, national institution and global systematic institution. So for smaller bank, they have a prompt corrective action. However, if that prompt corrective action fails, then it will lead to general insolvency proceeding. However, for larger bank, they have to work with viability plan, which will have to provide for improving the capital structure, improving the management system and business restructuring. However, the general insolvency proceeding, as per their law, provide for three possible measures, which is civil rehabilitation, corporate reorganization and bankruptcy. Then if you look at the United Kingdom's law, they have a Banking Act 2009 which provides for administration process of banks, building societies and investment bank into United Kingdom. So they have a SRR, which is Special Resolution Regime under Banking Act 2009. So they basically they have a tools, they can transfer all or part of the assets of that bank to private sector so that some centralization could be made. They can also transfer some part of bank asset to a bridge bank, and they can also transfer the share of the bank to a treasury. So the ownership and control then lies with the treasury. The UKSSR empowers the authority to split the bank so that the partial transfer of property could also be there, and some viable institution can be taken out from the ailing institution. There are rules which have been notified by the central government using the power under section 239 combined with section 227 of the code. So basically these rules were notified on 15 November 2019. So they are applicable to FSPs or categories of FSPs as notified under section 227, which are systematically important financial service provider. However, they have not included our banks in FSP's definition. So probably they'll be coming out with a separate resolution or insolvency framework for banks as well. The government will notify specific category of FSPs that do not fall under systematically important category and which shall be resolved under normal provision of the code as ordinarily applicable to corporate debtor. However, this special framework provided under section 227 is aimed at serving as an interim mechanism to deal with any exigency. However, for full-fledged enactment dealing with financial resolution of a bank is being framed out, and it will come out sooner or later. If you look at the rules, it basically states that IBC provision for CIRP liquidation and voluntary liquidation, unless and until specifically departed from, they shall apply to these financial service providers as well. The following exception has been carved out: that CIRP of FSP shall only be initiated on application by appropriate regulator. So no OC, no financial creditor can initiate the CIRP. On admission, the administrator will be appointed. The administrator need not be IRP or IP insolvency professional. He could be anybody else, but his rights, roles, responsibilities, duties will be equivalent to that of IRP, RP, liquidator, by whatever name you may choose to call him. He will be at par with that. Okay, so appropriate regulator may also constitute an advisory committee. That has also been provided under these rules, and cost paid or fees paid to this advisory committee shall also form part of insolvency cost. This has also been provided under these rules. Further, these rules provide for interim moratorium period, which shall commence on and from the date of filing application or from initiation of CIRP by appropriate regulator till its admission or rejection by adjudicating authority. The provision of interim moratorium period shall not apply to any third-party assets or properties. For third-party asset and property, there has been a separate notification which we are going to discuss in just some time. So these provisions shall not apply to them. However, the administrator shall take control and custody of third-party asset, and how to deal with them, that will also be specified in that notification. License or registration of which authorizes a financial service provider shall not be suspended during the interim moratorium period. Further, upon approval of resolution plan by the committee of creditors, the administrator shall seek NOC from regulator that it has no objection to the person who would be in control of management of financial service provider, because financial service provider would still be a very critical to Indian economy. So approval of regulator is required so that no unwanted person or organization should take control of that institution which is of systematically importance to Indian economy. Further, the FSP shall obtain a prior permission of appropriate regulator in case they want to go for voluntary liquidation. However, the adjudicating authority shall provide the appropriate regulator an opportunity of being heard before passing any order of dissolution or liquidation against the FSP. These are some more things are there. Fee payable for filing the application will be 25,000. National Company Law Tribunal Rule 2016 shall be applicable to these applications as well. Form 1 is there for application to adjudicating authority. Form 2 is there for written consent by administrator, and consolidated rule for insolvency liquidation application to AI is there as against the normal procedure, whereas you have different rule for insolvency, for liquidation and for application. So they have brought in a consolidated rules wherein everything has been provided. So let us look at these rules very quickly one by one. So Rule 2 talks about applicability, which states that it's applicable to notified FSPs or categories of FSPs as per section 227 of IBC. Now Rule 3 talks about some definition. It basically talks about administrator, advisory committee and appropriate regulator. Administrator is basically a person appointed by adjudicating authority or proposed by appropriate regulator. Advisory committee is again a 3-member committee formed by a regulator, and appropriate regulator would be the regulator who will be notified by the government to deal with a particular FSP. So then again, Rule 4 is there, which basically states that wherever corporate debtor word is used it will be treated as a financial service provider, whereas words IRP, RP, IP, liquidator is used, the word administrator is to be read. Then rule 5 is there, which talks about corporate insolvency resolution process for financial service provider. It states that its initiation of the process will be on the application of the appropriate regulator. Application will be treated as an application filed under section 7. It will be deemed section 7 application, and then AA shall appoint a person as an individual, proposed individual as administrator. So appropriate regulator will propose an individual as administrator. Again, there will be a moratorium. Interim moratorium will be there from the date of application against the date of admission in CIRP. So you know, in CIRP the moratorium is from the date of admission, not from the date of application. Here it's a bit different. Further, license or registration shall not be suspended or cancelled, and section 14 moratorium provision of IBC shall be applicable to this FSP as it is. Rule 5 also provides for advisory committee. It states that within 45 days of insolvency commencement date, appropriate regulator may appoint three advisory committee with 3 or more persons having skill in finance, economy, accountancy, public policy, etc. Their compensation again will be treated as a CIRP cost, and whatsoever the meeting would be there, the administrator would be the chairman of those meetings. Rule 5 also talks about resolution plan. It says that the resolution plan will explain how resolution applicant satisfied himself to be fit person for engaging in the business of financial service provider. It also goes on to state that after COC's approval, an NOC is also required on the basis of fit and proper criteria without prejudice to section 29A. Further, if no NOC is given, then after 45 days, it will be deemed that NOC is there. And what is fit and proper criteria? It's basically a very basis of subjective evaluation. It basically talks about evaluating manager, directors or shareholders of that resolution applicant with respect to their ability to fulfill their duties or integrity or propriety. Basically these things are examined. So moving on to rule 6, the rule 6 I think we have already discussed. Rule 7, liquidation process. The provision relating to liquidation process shall also apply to this liquidation of financial service provider. License and registration shall not be suspended, as we have already discussed. Opportunity of being heard shall be provided to appropriate regulator before passing any order of dissolution, either under section 33 or under section 54. Same thing goes for voluntary liquidation. However, there is a one difference. A prior permission of appropriate regulator is required in case of a voluntary liquidation is to be filed, and again opportunity of being heard will be provided to appropriate regulator by the adjudicating authority before passing any order of dissolution under section 54. Rule 9 talks about insolvency professional, says that administrative duties, function, obligation, responsibilities, rights, power will be that of IP, IRP, RP liquidator depending upon what phase or what duties or what stage of the process he is discharging his function. Further, it goes on to say that appointment or replacement of by the adjudicating authority will be only on the application made by appropriate regulator. So, administrator can only be removed on an application made by appropriate regulator. Rule 10 talks about assets of third party. We have also already discussed there is a separate notification which has been issued by Government of India, which talks about the manner of dealing with assets of third party. So, it basically here also the administrator shall take control and custody of asset of third party, and the manner of dealing with them will be discussed in short while. So this is the notification which was issued by Government of India on 18th November 2019, which specified the category of financial service provider as non-banking financial service, and they had appointed Reserve Bank of India as the appropriate regulator, and the manner of dealing with third party asset, which was said to be notified later on as per at the time of this notification, which however was notified later on. We will come to it. This is a notification which was issued in relation to starting an insolvency proceeding of DHFL. So now notification under Rule 10 dated 30th January 2020, it basically talks about whether the FSP is contractually obliged as on insolvency commencement date to act as a servicing or collection agent on behalf of third party. So what he has to do? He has to prepare a statement of such transaction. He needs to continue to discharge those obligations as FSP. He needs to collect those receivable and maintain them in a separate account and not to merge with the funds or assets of a financial service provider. Oversees the operations, transfer such receivable collected to the person entitled to receive. However, any fee which is to be retained by FSP in discharging these duties shall be treated as a asset forming part of assets of FSP. Further, assets of third party, again where FSP has in its custody assets of third parties, again he will have to prepare a statement, ensure that statements are maintained in a separate and distinct manner, not to merge those assets with the assets of FSP, and return those assets to the person entitled to receive it. However, where such assets are not to be written by the administrator due to some breach of a term, then he can retain those assets, dispose of the asset, realize the dues payable to him, and treat it accordingly as a asset of the FSP. So very quickly, we'll just compare the CIRP and CIRP of corporate debtor and CIRP of financial service provider. So who can initiate in CIRP? In corporate debtor's case, operational creditor, financial creditor, corporate debtor can initiate. Here only appropriate regulator who is deemed as a financial creditor can initiate it. Financial threshold is rupees 1 crore in CIRP. Here financial threshold is rupees 500 crores. Appointment of IP can be appointed by corporate debtor, financial creditor or operational creditor. Here only appropriate regulator can appoint it. Replacement of IRP, the resolution professional can only be replaced with 66% vote of the committee of creditor, but in financial service provider case, it can only be replaced by an application filed by appropriate regulator to adjudicating authority. There is no advisory committee in normal CIRP, whereas in FSPs there is a role of advisory committee. There is no interim moratorium in normal CIRP, whereas there is an interim moratorium in FSPs. License and registrations can continue subject to normal payment in CIRP, whereas in FSP they shall not be suspended during interim moratorium period. Approval of resolution plan, it has to be approved by COC with 66% vote in CIRP, and in FSP's case, along with this condition, you also need a NOC from appropriate regulator. Moving on, the qualification is required as insolvency professional as per IBBI. For FSP case, the administrator is not required to be insolvency professional. Again, compensation to advisory committee, it shall form part of CIRP cost, whereas there is no advisory committee, hence question does not arise in normal CIRP. If you compare it with normal liquidation, then what happens? In normal liquidation, license and registration can continue only in case where you are going to sell it as a going concern, whereas in case of a financial service provider, it cannot be cancelled without giving an opportunity of being heard. Liquidation under section 33 is automatic if CIRP fails. Here in FSP's case, adjudicating authority to provide an opportunity of being heard. Section 54 dissolution under normal CIRP on an application to be filed by liquidator, but in case of FSP, it is to be only after providing an opportunity of being heard to appropriate regulator by adjudicating authority. Initiation of voluntary liquidation, again in normal liquidation there has to be a declaration of solvency filed by majority of directors, but in case of a financial service provider, prior permission of appropriate regulator is required. Whereas there is no such condition is there in normal liquidation. Again, order of dissolution under section 59, again it's being made on an application by a liquidator, but in case of FSP, adjudicating authority has to provide an opportunity of being heard. With this, friends, I conclude my deliberation on CIRP of financial service provider. I hope with my deliberation, I was able to give you some insight with relation to insolvency of financial service providers. In case you need to ask me any question or you need to take a copy of this presentation, do let me know in comments. I would be more than happy to share with you this presentation and any question which you might have with regard to this presentation. Thank you so much for watching this video. This is CA Hemant Gupta signing off.